So hey guys, so you just watched the video on simplifying radicals. So I can't even talk. I tried to kind of split them up so you weren't on a video for 10 or 15 minutes there. So watch that one first. Now that you know how to simplify radicals, one thing that also pops up is rationalizing the denominator. So I think we've gone over this quick in class, but it is something I wanted to go into a little bit more detail. So once again, we'll just look at some examples. You'll try one or two, and then these will be a part of your assignment for today. So to rationalize a denominator, the reason we do it, when we're giving a final answer, I'm just gonna kind of make something up. We don't want a radical, a square root in the denominator. Kind of goes against our math rules, our general math rules. So we need a way to kind of deal with that. And the way we're gonna deal with it is you're going to multiply by whatever's in the denominator. So whatever's in your denominator, the square root of 2, you're gonna take that and then put it over itself. So basically, when you put something over itself, you're multiplying by 1. So it's not actually changing the value. But what it will do is when you multiply across, it will take care of that radical in the denominator. So you just go straight across. 2 times the square root of 2, you would just write as 2 square root of 2. And the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, whenever you multiply a radical by itself, you're just going to be left with a number underneath. So you just end up with 2. So as you're giving the final answer, you do want to make sure, since we now have a fraction, that things are simplified. When you simplify, you kind of ignore the radical part and see how you just have 2 over 2. You want to reduce that. We know that 2 over 2 just reduces to 1, and my final answer would just be 1 square root of 2. So let's look at a few more examples just to make sure you're feeling comfortable with that process. Once again, that's one of the things in Math Excel that I think we're getting answers wrong. We're just not making things as simplified as possible, so it's not accepting your answer. And I know that's frustrating, so that is something we want to clear up. So let's say I said, what is rationalize 5 over the square root of 3? You would say, okay, I'm not going to get my answer like this because there's a square root in the denominator. How do I take care of it? I'm going to multiply by whatever's in the denominator over itself. So you just kind of put it twice, one in the numerator, one in the denominator, and then you just go straight across. 5 times the square root of 3 is just 5 square root of 3. And then the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, any radical times itself, you're just going to get the number underneath. When I look at this, if you kind of ignore the radical, I can't reduce 5 over 3, so that would be my final answer. So let's try a few more. Same steps, I'm just changing the numbers. How about 6 over the square root of, I'm just trying to come up with 10. I don't know, just making something up. So same idea, just change the numbers, take what's in the denominator, multiply by that over itself, go straight across. You get 6 square root of 10 over 10. Okay, so that wasn't terrible once I knew the setup. Please make sure you check your answer and see if you can reduce it. So when you're reducing, kind of ignore that. 6 over 10, I can reduce. Those are both divisible by 2, right? So when I divide that, I would get 3 square root of 10 over 5. And that would be your final answer. So what can happen sometimes, and I wanted to point out to you, so in case you see it in the future, you could have something like, I don't know, 2 over the square root of 12. And you're saying, all right, well, this looks pretty familiar. It looks kind of like the other ones. They just changed the numbers. We're going to multiply by the square root of 12 over the square root of 12. And we go straight across. 2 square root of 12 over 12. Okay, so you're feeling pretty good about life. We can reduce that fraction. We're going to do that in a second. What happens on this one is when you get the radical here, I can simplify this. So going back to simplifying, I'm just going to kind of do it off to the side over here. Break it down. 12 is 4 times 3. And then when I simplified that, that would be 2 square root of 3. So we can see all that other stuff is still in play. If you have a radical that you can simplify, you need to do so. So what I would do at this point is say, okay, I have a 2 out in front. I'm replacing the square root of 12 with 2 square root of 3, and that's over 12. So a little bit more simplifying because I can multiply that out, 4 square root of 3 over 12. And then when I get to the end, I see if I can reduce. I'm going to kind of cover that bad boy up. Those are both divisible by 4, right? And my final answer, I kind of ran out of room there, would be 1 square root of 3 over 3. So that one had a little bit more work just because, okay, the first part's the same, but when I got here, I could simplify the radical. So I did that just off to the side. And then once that was replaced, I could do some reducing. So kind of try to follow that one. That's about as many steps as you can get in this type of problem. So let's try one more like that where there's maybe a little bit of extra simplifying to get the final answer. And then I'll have you guys try one. So what if I said, what is 3 over the square root of 18? And you would say, okay, well, the first thing, I really don't want that square root in the denominator, so I'm going to multiply by that over itself. And I end up with 3 square root of 18 over 18, okay? But I look and I say, oh, square root of 18, I can definitely simplify that. So off to the side, I'm gonna do it on this side this time, just so I have some extra room. 18 is divisible by 9, 9 times 2. The square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 2 we just keep. So what I'm going to do is replace this with 3 square root of 2. Okay, so I replaced it. I can multiply these two numbers on the outside, 9 square root of 2 over 18. And then last but not least, kind of ignore that radical part and reduce that fraction, 9 over 18. Those are both divisible by 9. Will give you a final answer of square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so a little bit more simplifying, but we're just doing our best to get to the end. Remember, when you're doing something in class, I will give you partial credit, absolutely. Like, do anything and you're going to get something. Sometimes with those online programs, once again, they get a little bit particular with how they want their answers. So try to do your best to simplify as much as possible. If we're ever doing an assessment online, I always ask you to attach your work for that reason. If I see that it's wrong, I will go back and check your work and then give you partial credit. So just as a heads up there. So why don't you try this one? I'm going to ask you to simplify. Let's do, I don't know, let's not make it too crazy. 4 over the square root of 8. So I'm just going to pause for like 10, 15 seconds, and then you can always pause the video if you need extra time. All right, so once again, if you need extra time, you probably will. Feel free to pause me and then start when you're ready. So first thing I say is I don't want this radical in the denominator. I'm going to multiply by the square root of 8 over the square root of 8. Go straight across. I get 4 square root of 8 over 8. Great. But I say, wait a second, I can simplify that bad boy. So off to the side, I break it down. And that would simplify to 2 square root of 2. So I'm going to replace that. Okay, so I get to here. I can multiply those numbers on the outside. So that gives me 8 square root of 2 over 8. And then last but not least, kind of ignore that and then just reduce your, those are obviously both divisible by 8. And you would just be left with 1 square root of 2. So I just wanted to point that stuff out to you. I don't know if it looks familiar or not. Once again, I don't really know what you guys do in previous classes. I'm going to be honest. So I'm trying to go into this, just reminding ourselves it's a weird year as is, but we do need to be a little bit better with those basic skills. So we needed to take some time out to do those today, and that is perfectly fine. So you're going to watch this video, and then you're going to complete the assignment that goes with it on Google Classroom. Have a lovely day. Let me see if I can actually get out of this. Sorry.